Greetings everyone, welcome to my sketchbook. In the last video I opened up some card packs and I found this, which I've never seen before, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to attempt to draw this thing not knowing anything about it. This is kind of like the idea that I had, and I'll zoom in on this just for fun, just to see how terrible it is. Yeah, so I had no idea that you don't get to see the center stem here of the apple. I didn't know that the fifth one sat up through there and that the others sat on each of the sides, if you can call them sides of the apple. So, you know, like a compass, northeast, southwest. Anyway, and that it had two tails, that there were kind of like 7 parts, 2 tails, 5 heads of the Hydrapple. So I got to watch a couple of Pokemon battles, and I think I'm going to try to draw this again now that I know a little bit about it. So let's see how it goes this time around. I'm going to keep it kind of zoomed in on that distance, and we'll set up the next page here. Open up my inkwell. So, okay. Now, I'm not really sure how I want this to go, but I'm going to try it, yeah, like I said, I'm going to try to treat it a little bit differently. I'm going to start with the snout of the lead, or the stem part of the Hydrapple this time around. And I'm just going to kind of lightly work on that. I think I'm going to kind of leave it a little bit cartoony, but I like to draw dragons anyway. So I'm going to put in as much detail as I feel like putting in. Now this particular serpent-like dragon has almost like floating elongated disc eyes. And I don't know if I really want to keep that, but I'm going to try a version of it, I think. I still want it to have the features. I'm going to have one eye slightly squinting. And for fun, so it seems like when it evolves, it makes a new body. Now it's supposed to be kind of like a syrupy sweet candy apple. I'm going to move this down a little bit here, and let's see if I can get that to focus just a little bit better, if it will. Okay, that's a little bit better. And when the original Diplin evolves, it almost seems as if the original apple that it was in gets stuck on one of its horns. And then it makes a new body when it evolves. So let's say this right here is like the original candy apple. Now, in my head, I'm under the impression that when it evolves and gets all these bonus body parts, that it is still like they're not separate snakes or separate serpents, that it still thinks in unison. Now, I didn't do any real research on it. Like I said, I watched like some battles just to see, the placement of the heads. Now, I'm not sure why. In the last picture, I gave it teeth. I don't know if it's necessary to have teeth with this particular creature or not. Tongue. I think I'm kind of reminded of Don Bluth cartoons, or the same person that would have done what would be Dragon's Lair, the video game, but like the Rats of Nim. I kind of like that animation style. Like if you've seen, what would be cartoon? Jungle Book. If you've seen the serpent in that, kind of a neat style. And mind you, Jungle Book is a Disney thing. Don Bluth was versus Don Bluth's cartoons. Uh, had a very unique style. Now, we'll kind of focus on this a little bit more just for fun. So the sizing is completely different than what you would see, but I'm doing this, how I kind of feel like doing it though. Now, let's see. So tell me, how often do you find yourself sitting down with a scrap piece of paper and just doodling something? So for me, that can happen just out of the blue. I'll get an idea and I'll be like, oh, what am I gonna do with this idea? And I don't always keep stuff sitting inside my head, although that's kind of a fun thing to do. I will grab a scrap piece of paper and I will jot things down or I will scribble something. And sometimes those little doodles I end up putting an exceptional amount of time in on a little piece of paper. And that's kind of fun. So if you have like a sketchbook, you can treat it like a journal, and you can just stick in pieces of paper. I don't do that with my YouTube sketchbook, really. What ends up happening with this YouTube thing is that I sit down with an idea, and I don't really have a plan. I guess that's probably pretty obvious. It's pretty much on the fly. Sometimes I put a lot of thought into it, though, before I sit down. But I didn't really plan this one out how I wanted it to go. So sometimes by the end, I'm a little surprised with it. So many like little multiple micro adjustment type things. Like it's not really built into me to have a serpent tongue like this. And to have it not be so menacing. I do like the cartoony kind of look to it, though. Now, let's try a little bit here. I didn't make the eye perfectly floating. I don't think I'm going to add any color to this one, although I might. As you might hear me say, if I'm the person holding the pen, then I can kind of do whatever I kind of want to do. And when you do your drawings this way, where you don't pre-pencil, it's kind of a strange thing to make little fun mistakes and then you kind of live with it. Like for example, right now, I don't have the rest of the body figured out perfectly. Um, which is okay, I think, hopefully. Uh, but I am going to try to figure out a couple of other things here. So I'm going to go to this layer here. And distance-wise. So we don't get a lot of room for the apple. So this thing's supposed to kind of evolve from the size of an apple to something that ends up being around 5 foot 11, almost 6 feet tall. So like that's why I think that might be the original apple here, and then that other part of its, candy apple body, it kind of develops that itself. Uh, as I said, the other four heads kind of pop out in quadrants around it, around the top. So the idea that I have in my head is to have them kind of in different stages of kind of popping out. So let's say this one here will have, I'm just doing this kind of lightly. The eyes kind of just there, as if we're ready to pop out. And with these other bonus snakes, and I don't know if you see that well enough, uh, they don't have these horns, it seems, that act as like, a double stem. This one can probably pop out a little bit more. So let's say if it comes out here, oh, you know what? I could have, so there'd be one there, and one there, let's say. Yeah. This one will have kind of popped out a little bit. They almost look like, when it's not in like battle mode, they almost look like little kind of arms, like chicken wings. At least that's how it kind of looks to me. Head kind of turned back this way, just a little bit. We'll have a little wiggly tongue there as well. Let's zoom in on that because I don't know if you see that what I have going on here. Well, and I'm keeping it kind of light before I add more detail to it. I like drawing dragons. And if you've seen any of my other videos, I have a preference to my dragons having wings. They don't have to. I just kind of like them that way. And so this serpent-like dragon, if indeed that's what it is, doesn't have wings. How unfortunate. Just call it a traditional Hydra. It doesn't need to have wings. It's just a specialized serpent. Yeah, that's it. Specialized serpent. Okay. next, let's have from here. Actually, you know what? I want to put in a little bit more here. I think it's very important to constantly work on your craft. Now, I do other things outside of doodling around in my sketchbook, and there are other things that I need to spend more time on as far as the artsy things that I do. So, wood carving is another thing that I kind of need to spend more time with. So, my mother uh, was a fantastic whittler, and there was this. I think it was, well, it's a church-based club. I don't know if it still exists. It was called a Awana, and there was a this kind of part of it where, for competition's sake, you could make a wedge shaped car. You were given like a rectangle block of wood. Well, that really wasn't good enough for my mother to I don't know just carve something into the shape of like a doorstop. So she went through a few kitchen knives, like paring knives and bread knives, or whatever she could do to manipulate the shape of that rectangle into other things. So for a while, she would do these customs, and this is like in the early to mid 1980s. And she would do these wonderful um, carvings of, let's say, it could be a shoe, or it could be, I think she carved like a piano, and like whatever somebody was kind of into uh, as almost like a trait of their occupation or something that they really enjoyed doing. She would make a version of whatever that thing was that they really enjoyed. If they had like a fun little dog, let's say, and so anyway, I kind of caught on. There was one person who was a police officer who um, was working on getting his pilot's license, I believe, or maybe he had it. But one of the funnest things for him was actually he was RCMP, Al. Anyway, so he really enjoyed his little Cessna, I think, and she carved an airplane for him, and yeah, that was really neat. Now there is a custom track that had to be built to race these cars, and they had to be weighed in a certain way. So she had like a kitchen scale, and she did her best to make sure that it kept that weight. But you could drill holes into the bottom of your race cars to ensure that you could add weight to it if you needed to. They needed to be certain weight. Anyway, it's a funny sort of memory to pop into my head. Now I kind of like this little snake here. I mean, we're a few minutes in, and taking to do this. So I may split this up depending. But I do want to focus a little bit more on this, I think. What was I getting at? Yeah, well, getting back into wood carving, or doing more wood carving. But yeah, so my mother would have been a wonderful influence on getting me into that. She didn't do a lot of like traditional, grab a chisel kind of a thing. Oh, by the way, I'm back up here in the neck of this one. As I said, she did a lot more whittling, which is generally a craft of getting something that's a little bit less than, let's say, 2 feet. Well under a foot most of the time, something that you'd sit on your lap almost. So that was more her thing, and I got into doing larger. But regardless, whittling is still kind of a fun thing. And maybe for the next video I can grab a couple of things that I've done or whatnot. But anyway, this is a doodling channel. So we're going to doodle in our sketchbook here for now. That's my buddy Neville telling me that we're coming up on 28 minutes. So I may actually split this apart and do a little bit more later on. Let's look at these eyes just for fun here. I kind of get a kick out of those little moments though where you don't expect something to happen the way it does when you're drawing a picture. Like you'll fold, let's say, some material on an outfit. It's like, oh, well, that seems like it naturally could be that way. I like that kind of stuff. Other times you're just kind of playing around and you put a hand in that looks a little backwards. And you're like, oh, well, I really don't like the way that happened. It's like you step back and you look at something. I'm not there yet with this, with what I want this to be. I'm not really sure how. I mean, it's anyway. I'm not. That's something I need to look at when it comes to the Pokemon. But yeah, I'm not really sure if it's science mainly or like magic science. I'm not really sure what powers Pokemon. That's funny. If you know in the how that works in the comments, just let me know. But I'm not sure if it's like a mutation, and then yeah, no, I have no idea how that works. or if they're like a phenomenon that allows them to evolve as fighting creatures, or if it's alien technology. I know nothing about that. That's funny. I never tried to research that either, like what powers Pokemon. But I think they're like a force of nature, is how I kind of gather that. This isn't final outlining, but this is just character development of sorts. In some ways, I'm kind of finalizing certain parts of it. Worked on different things. So right now, for example, actually it started a little bit ago, working on a mural. That's really neat. It's on a school wall, gymnasium wall. I want that to be kind of in the background a little bit. I kind of would like to have some color, but I'm determining in my brain not to. I just ran out of ink there. I want to get the underside of this a little bit of like very fine cross hatching, but not really. Now, usually with cross hatching, you want it to go in a specific direction, let's say like the curve of something. We don't really cross hatch that much. And you use it to create an illusion of shape sometimes. So it's not always going to be the same direction that you put in your cross hatching. Cross hatching. Mouth. I talked a little bit about the Hydra in the last video in regards to like mythology. How if you remove a head of a Hydra, others would grow back. All right. Well, that's what I have so far. That's 3 out of 5. So I'm going to take a break with this, and then maybe later on today, I'll figure out what I want the other ones to do here, or come on to that side, hang out over here. Like maybe they all want to come over to this side, and then that way I can have the two tails kind of go to that side there. So I don't know. We'll see what happens a little later on today. I'll get back to this, and immediately I can tell you this looks weird to me. I like this like smaller one down here. But I consider this to be the main head, and I wanted it to be kind of cartoony. So I did have the original intention kind of that way. Yeah, like this one here, I kind of like the look of this, but would it end up being out further? But I didn't want it out further. We'll see what happens. Sometimes you end up with something anyway. All right then, folks. That is it for now. We'll pick this up a little later on. All right. Ciao for now.